This is Sports 225. Springtime. Things slow down a little bit, and it's always fun to catch up with Glenn Guilbeau from Outkick, who you should see two old guys here fighting technology leading up into this show. Well, we got it working, and Glenn looks great. Don't you, Glenn?
Good morning. You're in the kitchen office here. This is the exact same video shot that I do every morning with my Outkick co-workers. So you succeeded to do what no IT person there could do. You got me hooked up.
I love it. Wait, it's amazing because I do this off of a MacBook Air, and Glenn normally has a PC, but he was having trouble with it. So this is actually with his iPhone, and the technology is so amazing. You know, Glenn, I've told people when I first started in the newspaper business, we had computer systems that were 1%, not even probably, of what an iPhone can do today. I mean, it's like, bicycles versus moon rockets.
Well, I mean, the iPhone pictures, destroyed Kodak. And really, you don't need photographers like you used to. I mean, it's still great to have photographers, and there's still a lot of them. But I take my own pictures for stories now. It's unbelievable. I never thought I would be taking my own pictures and loading them in to the same story I'm writing, but that's what happens now.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I'll be at sporting events and I'll shoot some video just maybe to have it so I can refer back to it. And then I'll see that the video is so good, I'll embed it into a story or use it on social media. And it's truly incredible. But that means all of you watching, because you take pictures and post them on social media, you're all members of the media and you're all in the public domain. People forget that,
Yeah. And and anybody can do it. You don't have to get the focus right and get up this right. And there's so many videos out there that I remember when videos really started becoming part of newspaper websites and so forth. And it was such a novelty of just Les Miles talking. But now it's not. It's really got to be a great video, or it's videos aren't really seen as that valuable anymore, unless it's something really shocking happening in it.
Did you ever have to be in a situation in the newspaper business where you also took photos, like the black and whites with a real camera, and have to develop the film and print the pictures?
No, I never did that. That's what's so cool about just snapping your phone and using the picture in your story,
Yeah. So when I was first in the business, I was the sports editor of a chain of weekly papers in Kansas City. And I was in charge of the dark room. I was the sports editor, but that was my job to make sure all the supplies and stuff were there. So back then you wouldn't just shoot pictures arbitrarily, because you didn't want to waste the negatives and have to try to sift through them and everything. You'd go to a baseball game and you'd get one picture of the pitcher pitching coming right at you. So you knew you had one picture, and then you'd focus on first base. So the first baseman maybe stretching and catching the ball.
Or I remember working at the Mobile Register. The pictures would come in on the AP machine, and it was always a play at second base. That was always the first thing. That was the first action.
Yep, because that way you had yourself covered. Then you take chances and take pictures. But then after the games, you go back to the dark room. And when they say dark room, I mean, it's pitch black. You had to learn how to do this stuff in 100% blackness. And so you would develop the film had to be a specific temperature water in a canister. And then once the film was developed, you could put the lights back on, look at the negatives, and then you would print the pictures. And that was done not in 100% black, but in this sort of glowing reddish light. And you'd take the 8x10 from one bath of water to another bath of water.
Oh, I know.
Stunk, and it got on your fingers and cracked the skin. And that was how we got pictures.
Yeah. Well, I remember the AP photo machine when I was at the Town Talk in Alexandria. And I've gotten probably half a dozen pictures of Bruce Springsteen in concert from an AP photo, and kept it. And I have it framed at my house, like he's playing in Cleveland one night in '91. It's just a great shot. And I framed it, I mean, they were just great pictures. Those were the days, man.
Well, it's funny you say that. I have some of those photos from the old days. If I go through the boxes of crap that I have stuff saved, that's a great idea, and that's just what I need around here is more things in frames. But so speaking of Springsteen, since the last time you and I visited in February, I saw Springsteen in Kansas City.
Right.
in
That's
Kansas
right.
City for a volleyball tournament, and I got to see Springsteen because he was there, and it was a pretty cool show. And then 2 weeks ago, Glenn, you mentioned Cleveland. I was in Cleveland, coincidentally. Springsteen was playing that night, so it made the hotel a disaster, even though it was a nice hotel. But I did go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is just so great.
Oh,
You went
oh.
this summer, is that right?
Yeah, Michelle and I went over the summer, and I had gone in the late '90s too on a baseball trip. But yeah, it's and I went. That's the third time I've went actually. But it's wonderful. You can spend a whole day in there, and that part of Cleveland, we stayed right downtown at the Marriott by the football stadium, and that part of Cleveland's pretty cool.
Like where else would I have stayed but the Key Marriott in
That's
downtown
right.
Cleveland? Of course we did.
That's right. Yeah, I stayed at that same hotel for one of the women's Final Fours. When pretty sure when Van Chancellor, or it was right before Van Chancellor became the coach. I remember LSU lost in the first round, but yeah, I like Cleveland. I've always liked Cleveland. Well, that's great. How did Bruce sound? Did he sound 75 years old?
Only 73, but
Yeah, yeah.
I think he's only 73. No, his voice is still really good. His energy is fantastic. The band puts on a great show. They had some great long jams and riffs that I really liked. I personally am not a big Springsteen fan. I don't dislike him. I like his music. I don't it's not like my thing. So like, I wouldn't go out of my way to ever see him again, but I'll leave you with this. So I go back to the bar that night in this little hotel that I was staying at downtown. It was a boutique hotel. It was a smaller bar. And there's a guy sitting there about our age, Glenn. He goes, "Oh, did you go to the show tonight?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "What'd you think?" I said, "Oh, it was nice." And he said, "Man, yeah." I said, "I'm going to see him 15 more times on this tour." And I was like, "What?" And I wanted to just say to him, "What is wrong with you?" And all I did was say, "Hey, what are you drinking?" Because I mean, what else are you gonna do? Buy him a beer. And
I wouldn't. I'm one of the biggest Springsteen fans I know, and I wouldn't have seen him 15 times in his prime. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 times.
he is Glenn Guilbeau, which we sort of mentioned at the beginning. He writes for Outkick.com and covers the SEC and other things. And we'll talk some about that when we get back. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Back on Sports 225, hanging out this week with Glenn Guilbeau. He wrote the book about Skip Burtman, and somewhere in there, if you remember to bring one to the desk, he'll show us one. And well, maybe we'll sell a book or two. He also covers the SEC for Outkick.com. You can read his stuff there. But you did both Final Fours. Did you go like alternate days, back to back?
No, I should have though. I've done that before. One year the men were in St. Louis and the women were in Indianapolis. No, vice versa. When Brady in 06 took the Tigers to the Final Four in Indianapolis, the women I think were in St. Louis. And I remember driving back and forth. And I could have done that between Houston and Dallas. That was doable. But no, I stayed in Houston the whole time. But I tell you that the women's Final Four was the talk of Houston, even though the men's Final Four was in Houston. And I was at a great steakhouse in Houston on the Friday night of the Final Four, Vic and Anthony's, downtown Houston, not far from Minute Maid.
Been there many times. A friend of mine who lives there likes to take me there when I go, and I'm not too proud to go eat some very expensive meat and drink some fine wine.
Yeah, well, it was Lent, so I had to get seafood, but and the bar was 5 people deep watching Iowa beat South Carolina on TV to really help LSU win the title. So that was awesome. Everybody was watching Caitlin Clark and hoping they beat evil South Carolina. It was wild.
Let me ask you this about that while we're on it. And I don't want to get into the whole thing about those two players, but do you agree with me that they lost an opportunity to have embraced each other at the end of that game and thanked each other for what they had just done for each other and for women's basketball and helped it elevate? Does women's basketball have to have a good guy, bad guy, or a nasty rivalry to get in the consciousness? I mean, I would have liked it so much more if the two of them had done something together in a friendly way and say, look what we got coming next year.
They should have. Exactly. Yeah. Both of those girls are coming back, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Mulkey will be back. South Carolina will be back. So it's going to be great. And I heard you in Moscona the other day talking about that. And the women's basketball was already the talk of the country going into that national championship game. And it would have continued to be, even without the mess they had after the game, which was really, it was Angel Reese's fault. It was ridiculous behavior. But what happened was, you had all these shock jocks weigh in, Stephen A. Smith and Shaq and everybody. And, and I have heard people say, oh, well, that made the game talked about for 2 weeks. Yeah, it still would have, without any of that, it still would have been talked about quite a bit. Not quite as much, but it would have been a better conversation for a shorter period of time, which I think in the long run might have been better.
Yeah, and I want it to be known. A lot of people said, oh, it was okay when Clark did it, but not when Reese did it. Let me tell you something.
Yeah,
Caitlin Clark, the way she acted in the regional, I said out loud to people I was with, why is she playing so angry and why is she so disrespectful to her opponents?
Which one are you talking about there?
Caitlin Clark.
Right.
And then I said it again when she played in the semifinals. There's no reason for that. And then there's no reason to taunt your opponent after you've just beaten them as well.
That's the difference. That was the difference. Caitlin Clark was doing her taunting like most players do, and more during the game. Angel did it after the game. And that was the first time I've ever seen, after a national championship is won, usually the players go to their teammates and dogpile or jump on one another. That's the first time I've ever seen a national champion rub it in immediately. That was just not good behavior.
No. And the one thing that I hope comes from it is that these great TV ratings, the nice attendance, not only helps women's basketball along the way, NCAA women's basketball and the WNBA, which is only in existence because the NBA has supported it and wants it to exist. So now maybe this is a milestone for not just them, but all women's sports in America. And maybe we can have women's sports on a Sunday afternoon on ESPN2 instead of cornhole.
Or maybe a Sunday night.
Yeah, there you go.
like it should have been. But, I think women's basketball proved to be an exciting game, more so than usual, as they got to the Final Four. There were still some bad games earlier in the tournament, including by LSU. Kim Mulkey said she would have turned the TV off. They had like a 7-minute span with neither team scored. That's still going to happen. But at least it got to be great at the end, largely because of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark made the tournament. And so did Kim Mulkey and her outfits and Angel Reese and how LSU plays. But really, Caitlin Clark got the nation going because she beat South Carolina. But it's going to be really exciting next year when LSU plays South Carolina and when Iowa plays, so they could definitely be a carryover effect.
Caitlin Clark is the best women's college basketball player I've ever seen. Now, that's not to say she's going to be the best pro, but she's a better college basketball player than Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner. I could go on and on with this because it's been
so versatile. She rebounds, assists, scores underneath, and hits the three. Angel doesn't shoot the three.
No, and Stewart's a fantastic passer. Anyway, all that, I think of Brianna Stewart. Caitlin Clark is There's a lot of good WNBA players who have come through the system. Unfortunately, to your point, and we're running long, is that there's only 5 or 6 really good women's teams, which is why it didn't get really good until the end. He's Glenn Guilbeau. He covers sports for Outkick.com. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge, you did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Back on Sports 225, Glenn Guilbeau covers sports for Outkick.com. But earlier last year, he finally finished and they published his book about Skip Bertman. Hold it up there, Glenn. I only see the bottom part of it. There you go. Everything Matters in Baseball with Slip Bertram on the cover. And you had a lot of fun being with Skip to do signings and promote the book.
I'm going to go ahead and read a chapter right now. Is that okay? Do we have enough time? I'm just going to read a chapter.
You read a long one.
No, it did. Skip was gracious as usual. He sat with me at the Barnes and Noble in Perkins Row right before Christmas. And then we did another one at the Barnes and Noble at City Place, my favorite one, where Buddy Romer used to hang. But no, so that was a lot of fun. And then Skip and Warren Morris just did a signing that I didn't go to in Alexandria. And, you know, the book sold out of the first 5,000 printing, and they're close to selling out the second printing, which was 3,000 books. And we are going to have a third printing with some additional chapters or chapter coming out in the fall before Christmas.
Good for you. You mentioned Buddy Romer. So last Tuesday, a week ago, 10 days ago, whatever, I was flying from Boston to New Orleans, and our flight was delayed almost 5 hours. And two things happened in the airport that were very interesting. On our flight was Chaz Romer, Buddy's son. Got to visit with him and his wife and talk about a bunch of stuff. His son is at Harvard, where he went, and his dad went. And then another guy we were sitting there. I didn't know him. And he says something to me about recognizing me from my voice from the beer segments on Moscona's show.
Yeah, right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
And by the way, and I said this on my beer segment, I had a chance this past week to drink Heady Topper, the IPA out of The Alchemist from Stowe, Vermont. Wow. And you can't get it here. And it's $13 for a 4-pack. And like I said, when you drive up, you have a limit of 18 4-packs. That's a big chunk of change. Let me tell you something. If you like beer and you like IPAs and you ever have a chance to drink Heady Topper, oh my gosh. I went to some of the review places where people, it's like guys had tears in their eyes writing about how much they love this beer. And I got to tell you, it was.
Where can you get it?
Absolutely.
Where can you get it?
Stowe, Vermont, for one. Places in New England and certain places around the country have it. So if you ever see one, and Glenn's a beer drinker. We meet up once in a while to catch a beer too. And this was serious business. So you got to do some more work on that book, or are you done?
Oh yeah, I'm going to be doing an additional chapter and adjusting some other things in the book for the third printing. Yeah. But real excited how it's been doing. Been heard a lot. Been hearing a lot about it, and hopefully we can sell some books in Omaha if the Tigers go there this year.
San Diego State note, since we talked about the Final Four, one of the director of ops is a assistant coach named J.D. Pollock, who played basketball as a freshman when Kirk Feinswag was a senior at Berry College in Rome, Georgia. So he was on that staff. I'll bet you imagined a lot of things that night, and not one of them was that you were going to be covering San Diego State and/or Florida Atlantic in the game before.
It was a fantastic NCAA tournament. I covered the first round in Birmingham, and I stayed home for the second round, covered from television, and then went out to the Final Four, and it was a blast. The Post, wrote a lot about Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, and it was just a lot of fun. And the buzzer beater by San Diego State was awesome. Was sitting right near there for that. So it was that sporting event, it always delivers. Doesn't matter if it's Cinderella's or if it's Blue Bloods, it's always great.
I got a quick one for you that you can touch on if you want to in the last minute we have of this segment. a young woman left ESPN to go to Outkick and is going to do a show there. Did you see that story?
Yeah. Charlie, we met her yesterday on this meeting. Right. I was in the dark though, because my video wasn't working.
And she said she was so happy to go to Outkick so she could speak her mind, something she felt like she couldn't do at ESPN.
Yeah. Well, Outkick has been, I feel like I died and went to heaven a lot. For one thing, we don't have budgets. Okay. And, we figure out what we're doing on a daily basis in the meetings, in the teleconference video meetings. And, there's a lot of freedom. They let you write what you want, to a degree. Sometimes they say, hey, this is big, this is trending, do something on this. But for the most part, they let you do what you think you ought to do. And it's great. It's a lot of freedom and not a lot of bean counters. In fact, I don't think there's a bean counter on staff.
You're looking at two guys who are in a very small club who can say that about their jobs in the media. And part of it's because I own Volleyball Magazine, and we spend the money the way I want, and I cover what needs to be covered and have people cover stuff and do it the right way and never have to be beholden to anybody unless there's just not enough money. But we cover the sport the right way. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I'm so glad more so to hear me say that. Anyway, go to volleyballmag.com, go to outkick.com, read our stuff. We got time for a very short segment on Sports 225. He's Glenn Guilbeau. I'm Lee Feinsfog.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225. Go to sports225.com for the show listings when it's on here on Your View, which is Cox 4. And I am positively 100% in the next few days going to update some old YouTube shows and get some things on there. Glenn, what you got coming up between now and the summer?
Well, don't forget to skip book at your Barnes & Nobles, Amazon.com, and AcadianHouse.com. But just wrote a lot about Zion Williamson's strange injury and the Pelicans end of the season. And I've been writing a lot about Secession, the HBO series. They let me write about that a little bit this week. And I'm writing about the LSU baseball team this weekend at the moment. They finally lost the game last night. But I'll be writing more about college baseball and as the SEC season comes to a close, and I'll probably be in Omaha and the SEC spring meetings in Destin. So it's been a lot of fun. You'll
successfully avoid spring football games?
Oh, I haven't written anything about that. Oh, I will be at the LSU spring game Saturday though, but because they're handcuffing me.
and you're here and you live here and they can't tell you, you can't say, I can't make it, I have to go. So there you go. He is.
I'm also covering the Zurich Classic for the first time. I'll be at the Zurich Classic actually today through much of the weekend.
Oh, we're doing this on Wednesday morning. So there you go. And hey, the food in the clubhouse is good. He's Glenn Guilbeau. Read his stuff at outkick.com. Buy the Skip Burtman book. Thank you for watching Sports 225. One last look. There you go. Goodbye.
Thank you, Lee.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching, prizes fill the sky.